When Rebecca Green pushed me off the villa terrace, my husband was on the phone, dotingly calling her baby. I thought I was sure to die, but I only ended up half crippled. Rebecca Green wasn't satisfied. She hired people to assault me, then buried me alive in the estate backyard, bruised and battered. 3 years after I died, Rebecca Green got kidney failure. My husband finally remembered me. He brought a group of bodyguards to the private estate to find me. When they couldn't find me anywhere, he thought I was hiding. If you agree to donate a kidney to Becca, I'll end your punishment and let you come home. In the end, he turned the place upside down and only dug up my bones. David Peterson stormed into the detached villa at the private estate with his bodyguards, his frown never easing. The private estate was managed by David Peterson's informants, but no one was allowed inside the detached villa. It was only used to imprison me, his mistaken wife. But I had been dead for 3 years. No one had lived here for 3 years either. Looking around, the villa entrance was overgrown with weeds. David Peterson frowned coldly. Sarah Miller is completely lazy. The weeds are this tall, and she hasn't bothered to tidy them up. Compared to Becca, it's like worlds apart. David Peterson snorted in disgust, then took out a handkerchief from his pocket to cover his mouth and nose. He must have been bothered by some smell. Sarah Miller, gotten used to living alone, haven't you? Get out here now. He looked down on me with contempt in his eyes, as if his condescending visit here was a rare act of charity. But he called out several times, and there was no response from inside. David Peterson grew impatient. He ordered the bodyguards behind him with a detached expression, "Go and break down the door." With a loud crash, countless bodyguards broke through the door and rushed inside to grab me. But in less than 5 minutes, they came running out with bewildered looks. "Mr. Peterson, the mistress isn't inside." David Peterson's brows furrowed tightly, his expression grim, like an impenetrable fog. He refused to believe it, went inside to search, and found no one. Then he took out his phone to call me. We hadn't been in touch for 3 years, and he frowned, thinking hard for a while, unable to remember my phone number. Finally, he clicked on the contact label Wretch and dialed the number. Floating nearby, I couldn't help but smile bitterly. David Peterson utterly despised me. It was only because 3 years ago, his childhood sweetheart, Rebecca Green, had a miscarriage by accident, but she framed me for it. David Peterson then saw me as a vicious wretch and imprisoned me in this desolate private estate, leaving me confined for reflection. Locked away for 3 years, he never once thought of me during that time. Now, making the call, he still seemed awkward. But the phone didn't even ring, it just said the number was switched off. David Peterson cursed angrily. "Sarah Miller, you think you can hide and I won't find you? Go ahead and hide. Let's see how long you can keep this up." Suddenly, exaggerated laughter came from a corner behind him. David Peterson turned back angrily and saw a completely drunk homeless man sitting by the wall in the overgrown weeds. His clothes were ragged, and he held a broken bottle, looking at the man before him drunkenly. "Stop shouting, the person inside died long ago," the drunk said, then let out another mournful laugh, indistinguishable from crying. Where did this drunk come from? One of the sharper bodyguards stepped forward and kicked the drunk over. "Drunk and disorderly in front of Mr. Peterson? Do you even know who owns this estate? It belongs to the Petersons. Get out of here before Mr. Peterson loses his temper." But after being kicked, the drunk seemed not to feel any pain. He lay on the ground, still laughing heartily. "Dead, died a horrible death. She was pushed from a height, fell and was crippled, there was blood everywhere. And, she was so beautiful, yet she was abused by those animals, then buried alive." David Peterson frowned fiercely, looking at the drunk before him with disgust. "Who are you? Where is Sarah Miller?" The drunk continued to cry and laugh. His bottle was kicked over, and the transparent liquid spilled everywhere, even on his face. For a moment, it was impossible to tell if the liquid on his face was wine or tears. Still drunk, the man staggered forward and hugged David Peterson's leg. "She was a good person, a good person. If she hadn't given me food to eat back then, I would have starved to death. It's a pity, she's dead." David Peterson coldly kicked him away roughly. He happened to fall onto a small mound of earth. The drunk immediately sobered up. He frantically tidied the small mound, muttering with a face full of guilt. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." David Peterson watched him, looking bewildered, and asked what that thing was. The drunk gave a bitter smile. "It's her grave." David Peterson glanced coldly, and indeed saw a crude grave marker, with a few crooked words carved into it. "Sarah Miller's grave." The drunk treated the crooked tombstone like a treasure, straightening it up and repeatedly saying sorry. "Talking nonsense. David Peterson coldly pushed the drunk away, sneered, and kicked the tombstone in half. 3 years later, Sarah Miller is still so manipulative, coming up with such a dramatic sob story. Not only did he ruin the tombstone, he also had the bodyguards get a hoe to level the small mound. I want to see how long Sarah Miller can keep up this act. The drunk saw the grave marker he had so painstakingly fixed being destroyed again and wailed in distress. I told you she's dead, why won't you leave her alone? Miss Miller was such a good person, how could she have died so horribly? David Peterson looked at him with disgust but ignored him. Further, he said coldly, Sarah Miller, I know you can hear me. I order you to come out within 3 days, obediently donate a kidney to Becca, and I might agree to end your punishment and let you come home. Otherwise, if you keep playing tricks and hiding, you'll never see your son again in your life. David Peterson finished speaking, then turned and walked away decisively. Before leaving, he had the bodyguards cripple one of the drunk's legs. You filthy beggar, that's what you get for crossing Mr. Peterson. Floating nearby, I wanted to cry but couldn't shed a single tear. My son, Ethan Peterson, I hadn't seen him in 3 years. David Peterson knew my son was my weakness, so he used him to threaten me. If I were still alive, I would have rushed out to meet him immediately. But I was dead. After David Peterson and his group left, the detached villa in the estate returned to its usual desolation and loneliness. Beside the small mound that had been leveled, only the drunk was making mournful whimpering sounds. He was weeping at my grave. Seeing his leg covered in blood from being beaten, I felt terrible. In these 3 years, not many people knew I was dead. But the drunk was the only one who had stayed loyal after my death. He had been beaten badly for stealing and was severely injured. Because I had found a doctor to treat him and given him food to eat, he saw me as his savior. He refused to leave and insisted on guarding the villa entrance for me. Including that day Rebecca Green secretly came to the villa to see me and pushed me off the terrace. He was outside the gate, watching me fall, utterly powerless. Falling from the 5th floor, I certainly should have died. But I didn't die, I only ended up half crippled. The drunk frantically ran to find a doctor for help. But in that moment, Rebecca Green saw I wasn't dead and hired a few homeless men to repeatedly assault me. Afterward, she threw me, bruised and battered, into the estate backyard, dug a pit, and buried me alive. As long as you're alive, standing between me and David, you'll always be a problem. Only when you're dead can I become the true Mrs. Peterson. In the afterlife, don't blame me for being cruel. Blame your bad luck for becoming my obstacle. Rebecca Green's vicious laugh was still frozen in that moment. Perhaps my resentment was too deep, so much so that I couldn't move on to reincarnation after death, instead lingering here, unable to leave. I had done nothing wrong, yet I was framed like this. When I was buried alive, I had only one thought in my mind, just to see my son one more time. Without me there, how would Rebecca Green treat him badly? 3 days later, David Peterson came to the private estate again. Behind him were the seemingly frail Rebecca Green, and a little man in a suit. Ethan Peterson. I floated over in surprise. Before I could even touch Ethan Peterson's small body, David Peterson, standing beside him, tightly clutched his neck. Sarah Miller, I'm giving you one last chance. The 3 days are up. If you don't come out now, don't blame me for strangling your son myself. David Peterson truly doted on his childhood sweetheart. To make me voluntarily donate a kidney to her, he was even willing to kill his own son, using him as a threat. He even brought a private medical team, ready to perform the kidney removal surgery right here. Sarah Miller, you can still live with one less kidney, but Becca's kidney failure can't wait. I'll give you 5 more seconds to think about it. 5, 4, 3. Ethan Peterson's small face was turning purple from being choked. He struggled to break free from his father's grip but couldn't move at all. His gaze was fixed resolutely towards the villa. Mom, don't come out. Don't worry about Ethan. You already donated a kidney to Dad before. If you lose another kidney, you'll die. Ethan Peterson gasped out these words. His hand on his neck paused, and David Peterson looked Ed down sharply. What did you say? How could your mother have donated her kidney to me? When I had leukemia back then, it was clearly Becca who gave me her kidney. Ethan Peterson's eyes were firm, looking at David Peterson with clear contempt. Dad, you're so stupid. You've been fooled by that woman again. Can't you see? Rebecca Green just wants to replace my mother, that's why she's always lying. My mom didn't push her at all. She was disobedient and insisted on going to the gym, which caused her miscarriage, yet she blamed my mom. My mom was innocent. Listening to these words, I was already in tears. My 6-year-old son trusted me more than my husband of 8 years. Ever since 5 years ago, when Rebecca Green returned from abroad, our peaceful life was shattered. On my son's first birthday, I joyfully waited for David Peterson to come home to celebrate our son's birthday. But he didn't come back until 10 p.m. I took the child downstairs to find him and found him locked in a tight embrace with Rebecca Green. Will you come back to me? If you do, I'll leave my wife and child for you. Rebecca Green giggled, saying she hadn't decided yet. And she demanded that David Peterson never sleep with me again. David Peterson pressed a doting kiss on her forehead, and when he came back, he was like Rebecca's obedient dog. For the next 2 years, he never touched me again. Even when he felt any desire, he would just get up and take a cold shower in the bathroom. Later, Rebecca Green became pregnant. David Peterson was overjoyed and rarely came home. His laptop, aside from work, was filled with meticulous lists of preparations for the baby's arrival. One list was for Rebecca Green, the other for the unborn child. My heart was bitter. I had never seen him so dedicated when I gave birth to Ethan Peterson. That night, I had a fight with him. But David Peterson looked at me coldly, not even interested in arguing. Can't you stop being so unreasonable? Becca is alone here with no one to look after her. We grew up together, can't I look after her a little more? From the time you were pregnant until you gave birth, you had so many nannies with you. What do you have to complain about? He snatched his jacket from my hand and left resolutely. He didn't even look back once at our son crying his eyes out. I was filled with despair then, realizing that when a man stops loving you, he can be utterly heartless. But then Rebecca Green went to the gym while pregnant and messed around with the trainer. This caused the fetus to become unstable, leading to a miscarriage. Yet she cried and claimed to David Peterson that I pushed her, deliberately causing her miscarriage. David Peterson flew into a rage that night and angrily slapped me several times, refusing to listen to my explanations. He just had bodyguards send me to the private estate to be confined for reflection. Less than 2 months later, Rebecca Green caused my death. David Peterson didn't know any of this, and he refused to believe it. Ethan Peterson siding with me angered David Peterson. David Peterson slapped him. Ethan Peterson was only 6 years old, how could he possibly withstand that? The slap knocked him down in front of my grave. David Peterson's eyes were filled with coldness. Ethan, what did I teach you? That's Rebecca. Where did you learn to call her that, woman? Just like your mother, you're both insufferable. Saying this, David Peterson turned and gently comforted Rebecca Green. After Ethan Peterson had pointed his finger and spoken, she pretended to be weak and shed tears again. David, I promise to protect you well. No one can bully you. Not even my own son. David Peterson turned and kicked his son again, frowning. Ethan, kneel down and apologize to Rebecca. Rebecca Green falsely played the good person. David, Ethan is still so young, don't be so harsh on him. If he dislikes me, it must be something I did wrong to upset him. It's not Ethan's fault. The gentler Rebecca Green's voice became, the colder David Peterson's gaze turned towards his son, Ethan Peterson. Seeing that Ethan Peterson hadn't moved yet, he kicked him harder. Are you deaf? Apologize to Rebecca. David Peterson truly cherished Rebecca Green, guarding her as if she were his life. When Rebecca Green was diagnosed with kidney failure, a psychic said it was retribution for all the bad things she had done. David Peterson flew into a rage on the spot and beat the man, leaving him crippled. Now, simply because my son disrespected that woman, he was forcing him to kneel and apologize to her. But Ethan Peterson was stubborn, just like me. His eyes were red-rimmed, clutching his small fists tightly. No. She's the one who killed my mother. Rebecca Green looked up in shock, her face changing drastically. David Peterson's body stiffened. He slowly turned back to look at Ethan Peterson. What did you say? Even I looked up in astonishment. How did Ethan Peterson know that Rebecca Green had caused my death? Before Ethan Peterson could explain, Rebecca Green stepped forward with a forced smile and tried to smooth things over. He's just a child, David. He doesn't know what he's saying. Ethan just misses Sarah so much, that's why he's saying things like that. I don't blame him, and you shouldn't take it to heart. But Ethan Peterson cried heartbrokenly. He forcefully pushed Rebecca Green away. You bad woman, leave my mother alone. As if he could feel my presence, he clung to the small mound of earth, refusing to let go. I know my mom is dead. She appeared in a dream to me 2 years ago. She said it was cold in the dirt, her face was covered in sand, and so was her mouth. She also said she was in so much pain, that someone pushed her from a height while she was still alive. Ethan Peterson was sobbing uncontrollably, as if he could truly see me. I suddenly remembered that the year before last, I missed my son terribly. and couldn't resist visiting him secretly in his dream. After a brief reunion, I thought Ethan Peterson would forget that memory. But I never expected him to remember it more vividly than anyone. With that push from Ethan Peterson, Rebecca Green pretended to lose her balance and fell heavily to the ground, scraping her hand. David Peterson's face instantly turned cold, and he rushed forward, concerned, to help her up. "Becca, are you okay? You wretched child. Just as vile as your mother. Both you and your mother should have been kicked out of this house long ago." A hint of a triumphant smile flickered at the corner of Rebecca Green's mouth, but she didn't forget to keep up her act of being good. "David, Ethan is still so young. How could he say such things unless an adult put the idea in his head?" Saying this, she shed tears, looking wronged. "I don't know what I did wrong to make Sarah hate me so much, that she would even corrupt Ethan and make him hate me, making baseless accusations. I had been dead for 3 years, with which I did she see me telling him to do that?" David Peterson's face grew colder, and he actually believed what Rebecca Green said. He frowned deeply and ordered the bodyguards in a chilling voice. "Someone, take the young master and lock him in the villa. He is not to be let out without my orders. I want to see how strong Sarah Miller is. Can she really stand by while her own son is starved to death?" The bodyguards exchanged uneasy glances, looking hesitant. David Peterson looked at them coldly. "Anyone who doesn't move won't get paid this month." At his words, the bodyguards rushed forward to grab Ethan Peterson, wanting to take him away. "Young master, don't make this difficult for us. Come with us." Ethan Peterson resisted with all his might, kicking and struggling wildly against them. "I'm not going. I want to stay with my mother." He clung tightly to that crude grave marker. It had been kicked over by David Peterson last Me, and the words were already blurred. But you could still make out the name, Sarah Miller. "She's sleeping alone in the dirt, it's cold and it hurts. I want to stay with her." "You want to stay with her, huh?" David Peterson gritted his teeth, angrily rolled up his sleeves, and stepped forward, picking up the hoe nearby and began to dig up the small mound. "Since you insist on staying here, I'll help you out." David Peterson was very strong, each strike dug deep. Ethan Peterson screamed and cried in terror, trying to shield the small mound, but he was held tightly by the bodyguards. David Peterson dug furiously for just a few moments when he suddenly hit something small and hard. David Peterson glanced down dismissively, then froze. He dropped the hoe and slowly bent down to pick it up. Floating nearby, I also leaned in to see. It was the ring David Peterson had made for me 8 years ago when he proposed. He couldn't afford a diamond ring, so he made me one from a piece of iron wire. It was set with a small, colorful stone David Peterson had found on his first trip to the beach, which he cherished like a treasure. He had knelt on one knee then, looking utterly sincere, saying I was like the little stone on the ring, his most precious treasure. Later, his business grew, and he made more and more money. Our lives became increasingly luxurious and wealthy. He could buy me more exquisite jewelry worth millions, but I was uniquely fond of that simple iron ring. I carried it with me everywhere. David Peterson had always known this. "How is this here?" His face was ashen, disbelief in his eyes. "Sarah Miller, get out here and explain this. What is going on?" But no one could answer him. David Peterson suddenly went mad, picking up the hoe and continuing to dig the small pit. Rebecca Green saw this and panicked, stepping forward nervously to stop him, her eyes darting around. "David, what are you doing? Calm down." Of course, Rebecca Green had to stop him. Oh. My remains were dug up, Rebecca Green's wicked scheme would be exposed. 3 years ago, she had personally orchestrated my tragic death, burying me alive in this pit while I was bruised and battered. She knew better than anyone who was in that pit. But David Peterson was as if possessed, refusing to listen to anyone trying to stop him. "Get away." He angrily pushed Rebecca Green away and continued digging, his eyes bloodshot. When the hoe broke, he simply knelt down and dug with his bare hands, digging until his hands were bleeding. Suddenly, his hands stopped. His face became tight and rigid. His gaze was fixed on the object beneath his hands, a chilling piece of bone, still with fragments of unrotted clothing. "How are there bones here?" David Peterson muttered to himself. Just then, someone swung a stick at David Peterson. "You wicked people. Miss Miller has been dead for so long, and you still won't let her rest in peace? You're digging up her grave." David Peterson reacted quickly, grabbing the stick with his free hand and looking at the person with bloodshot eyes. It was the same drunken man from 3 days ago. "What did you say? This is Sarah Miller's grave?" Before the drunk could answer, David Peterson shook his head, his eyes bloodshot, denying it. "No, that's impossible. They say evil never truly dies. Sarah Miller is such a wicked woman, she couldn't possibly have died so easily. The drunk looked at the man before him. Ha, you're Miss Miller's husband, the heartless bastard? After getting an affirmative answer, the drunk waved the stick in his hand, trying to drive them all away. Get out. All of you, get out. It's all your fault. Miss Miller was such a good person, and you people caused her to die so horribly. How can you even show your faces here? David Peterson's face was tight, but he forced a cold smile. You're an actor, aren't you? This must be another one of Sarah Miller's acts. Do you really think I can't see through it? David Peterson's gaze slowly dropped. Then he stomped on the exposed bones, crushing them. Like playing dead, do you? Let's see how long these props can keep up the act. Someone, call for a coroner. Rebecca Green had originally wanted to stop the coroner from coming. As soon as the coroner confirmed my identity through a DNA test, it would be easy to trace the events back to her. Even though she was confident that even if the truth came out, David Peterson would still choose to protect her, she still didn't want Sarah Miller's death to be exposed. She wanted me to bear the blame, continuing to live in David Peterson's disgust and hatred. That was what Rebecca Green wanted most. But the truth would eventually come out. Sarah Miller had been dead for 3 years anyway. How could a dead person win against the living? A smug smile played on Rebecca Green's lips. She might as well use this opportunity to make David Peterson give up completely, and she could finally become Mrs. Peterson for good. 2 hours later, the coroner's report was ready. The coroner, in a white coat, sighed softly. Mr. Peterson, please accept my condolences. According to the DNA comparison results, this is indeed your wife, Sarah Miller, and she died 3 years ago. David Peterson's face turned deathly pale, and he almost collapsed. He looked with bloodshot eyes at the pile of bones. Beside them, there was unrotted flesh, and a strong smell of decay filled the air. Usually sensitive to smells, he seemed not to notice it now. How could this be? Sarah Miller, how did she die? The coroner analyzed the findings using professional methods. It appears she fell from a height, breaking several ribs. There were also multiple blunt force injuries and signs of compound fractures on her body. Furthermore, the deceased's lower body. The coroner paused, glancing up at David Peterson, then continued calmly. The deceased was likely subjected to multiple assaults before death. There were also traces of soil in her lungs and organs, with a 95% probability of having been buried alive. With every word the coroner spoke, David Peterson's face grew paler. He had never imagined that Sarah Miller wasn't secretly hiding, refusing to donate a kidney to Rebecca Green, but she had been dead all along. For the next few days, David Peterson was like a walking corpse, completely numb. He refused to eat, refused to leave the house for work. He even rejected Rebecca Green's request to go shopping. Rebecca Green cried and whined in his arms. David, I know Sarah's death is a terrible blow to you. After all, you were married for 8 years. But she's gone. What can we do now? We can only live well, and take care of Ethan, don't you agree? It's just, my kidney failure. David, I might not be able to stay with you much longer. A hint of emotion finally showed on David Peterson's rigid face. He gently held Rebecca Green. Don't worry, I'll find you a suitable kidney donor. Rebecca Green smiled, satisfied. The kidney failure was fake, but his affection for her was real. But before he could find a suitable kidney donor, an uninvited guest appeared at the Peterson home. It was the drunken man from the private estate who had been guarding my grave. He had come specifically to wait for David Peterson. Then he handed him a piece of evidence. In here, you'll find the answers you're looking for. About how Miss Miller died. The drunk was completely sober this time. He wasn't holding a bottle, wasn't drunk. He had been waiting for this moment for 3 years. David Peterson looked at him, frowning. Were you Sarah Miller's friend? Why were you so good to her? The drunk gave a self-mocking laugh. I told you, she saved me. If she hadn't found a doctor to treat me back then, and given me food, I would have been dead by now. How could I not seek justice for her? I advise you to take a good look at what's inside. You'll see how innocent Miss Miller was when she died. What the drunk gave him was a USB drive. David Peterson didn't go home, he found a hotel and inserted the USB drive into his laptop to play the video. An hour later, David Peterson went cold all over, his hands and feet freezing. His face was ashen. Rebecca Green. Floating nearby, I saw clearly. The video the drunk provided was captured by the security cameras in the detached villa at the time. Rebecca Green caused her own miscarriage by messing around at the gym, yet she blamed me for it. Enraged, David Peterson kicked me out of the house, imprisoning me in the villa in the private estate. I had no freedom, couldn't step outside the villa. Someone brought me food regularly every day. 2 months later, Rebecca Green came to the villa with some people. Under the pretense of talking things over, she lured me to the highest point of the villa, the fifth-floor terrace, and declared her determination to become Mrs. Peterson. Then she shoved me violently off the terrace when I wasn't looking. At that moment, she deliberately called David Peterson on her phone to taunt me. His voice was gentle, asking if she had eaten and calling her baby. Almost at the same time, the wind rushed into my ears as I fell heavily through the air, like a crane with broken wings. Falling from that height, I thought I was sure to die. Thinking back now, I wish I had died then. Unfortunately, I only ended up half crippled. Rebecca Green wasn't satisfied. She hired people to repeatedly assault me, and then buried me alive. All of this was recorded by the villa's security cameras. Rebecca Green knew this footage existed, but she believed it couldn't harm her and paid a large sum of money to have it destroyed. The drunken man had spent everything he had to buy this footage at the time, just so he could seek justice for me someday. David Peterson didn't go home that night. He took his bodyguards to the private estate, where he had many informants stationed. Over the past 3 years, bodyguards had advised David Peterson to send more informants to keep an eye on me, even just to supervise. But David Peterson had refused every time. He'd sneered that there was no need to waste extra manpower and resources on me. But now, he was consumed by regret. David Peterson rushed to the private estate and questioned the informants. The informants at the private estate were surprised to see David Peterson. Mr. Peterson hadn't been there for 3 years. They had thought he didn't care whether Mrs. Peterson was alive or dead. But upon meeting him again, he demanded to know the full story, his eyes red. It was then that David Peterson learned that after I had been confined in the private estate for 2 months, Rebecca Green had come. She thought money could make anything happen. She brought bodyguards to the estate and caused my death, and paid those people millions as hush money, thinking that would be the end of it. But unexpectedly, one of the people she paid owed me a favor. His name was Mike Johnson, and he had long wanted to clear my name. He told the truth. Mr. Peterson, Miss Miller left a last letter before she died and asked me to give it to you. David Peterson took it with trembling hands. I hadn't dared keep that last letter in the villa. If Rebecca Green had found it, she would have ripped it to shreds. I had given it to Mike Johnson, telling him that if he ever had a chance to see David Peterson, he must give him this letter. Never thought it would be 3 years later. In that last letter, I clearly wrote about everything that had been misunderstood back then. On the surface, Rebecca Green was adoring and loving towards David Peterson, but in reality, she was only after his money and wealth. The reason she miscarried was because she went to the gym for a secret rendezvous with the trainer. They got carried away, which led to the fetus becoming unstable and miscarrying on the spot, and then she blamed me for it. Moreover, the child she miscarried wasn't David Peterson's. Also, years ago, when David Peterson was ill and needed a kidney donation, I was the one who donated it to him. But Rebecca Green took credit for it. It was because of this that David Peterson and I grew further apart. He misunderstood, thinking I was heartless, selfish, and didn't love him enough, only wanting to take our child and leave him. He was convinced that Rebecca Green loved him dearly, cherishing him more than her own life. David Peterson had always enjoyed the feeling of being needed, and Rebecca Green happened to be someone who strongly evoked a desire to protect her, satisfying that need in him. And all of this also drove him and me further apart. After learning Rebecca Green's true nature, he gnashed his teeth. Rebecca Green, you'll pay for deceiving me. He clutched the last letter I had left behind, sobbing uncontrollably. Sarah, I was wrong. But I could no longer forgive him. Once David Peterson turned ruthless, he was truly formidable. One moment Rebecca Green was the apple of his eye in his arms, the next she was the person he swore to destroy. Taking the evidence the drunk had given him, along with my last letter, he sued Rebecca Green, with only one demand, a life for a life. Before that, David Peterson had specifically gone to the hospital and thoroughly investigated Rebecca Green's kidney failure. He learned that it was just a pretense. So you've been playing me all these years? David Peterson was completely enraged, swearing to destroy Rebecca Green. Rebecca Green never expected that David Peterson, who she thought loved her with his life, would be so determined to send her to prison. Since things had come to this, she didn't hesitate to show her true colors. The night before the trial, she hired people to kidnap my son, Ethan Peterson. She recorded my son's cries in the abandoned warehouse and called David Peterson. David Peterson, your son is in my hands. Just drop the lawsuit and agree to marry me, and your son will be safe. Otherwise, your son might join that wretch underground. David Peterson actually started to care about Ethan Peterson. He was filled with guilt towards me and had planned to make it up to his son. As expected, he readily agreed to drop the lawsuit and ordered preparations for a grand wedding. Rebecca Green let down her guard, thinking her plan had worked and she was about to marry into wealth and become a wealthy socialite. But just as she appeared splendidly in her wedding dress at the wedding venue, countless police officers burst in and arrested her. Rebecca Green's smile froze on her face. She flew into a rage and turned to look at David Peterson. "You tricked me." David Peterson didn't deny it. He stepped forward with a cold smile and helped the police put handcuffs on Rebecca Green's wrists. "You lied to me first, and then you killed my wife. You even kidnapped my son and threatened me. Rebecca Green, not making you pay with your life is already letting you off easy. Why would I ever marry you? I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in prison." Rebecca Green was indeed sentenced to life imprisonment. She would spend the rest of her life in prison. For someone who only wanted to marry into wealth, this was a fate worse than death. I had expected David Peterson to start a new life, find a new girlfriend, build a new family. All I hoped was that he would treat Ethan Peterson well, that Ethan wouldn't be wronged or bullied. But David Peterson didn't. Countless people came to his door trying to set him up on blind dates, but David Peterson rejected them all with a cold face. He stopped going to the company regularly. The company's business plummeted within 2 months, but he paid no attention. He spent more time sitting in the villa at the private estate. The weeds had grown tall, but he didn't leave it to others, personally rolled up his sleeves and pulled them out. The furnishings in the villa were covered in dust, but he wasn't annoyed, instead wiped them clean little by little with a cloth. "Sarah, when you were locked up here alone, did you hate me very much? You must have been very disappointed in me." He gave a self-mocking smile. 6 months later, David Peterson's condition didn't improve, instead, he sank deeper. He even took clothes I used to wear and went downtown, asking everyone he met if they had seen his wife. He'd say his wife's name was Sarah Miller, and she looked like an angel. People looked at him as if he were crazy, avoiding him with expressions of disgust. Eventually, his company assistant brought a psychiatrist to see him. They realized that David Peterson's obsession over the past 6 months had become so deep that he had developed a mental illness. When my parents learned about David Peterson's condition, they took my son Ethan Peterson away that very day. They would raise Ethan Peterson themselves. I felt relieved. David Peterson helped me build a larger, more spacious grave. He visited it every few days and brought lots of my favorite treat, chocolate chip cookies. Eventually, he would just lie down next to it and fall asleep. Later on, his company went bankrupt. David Peterson shouldered enormous debts and was often chased and beaten by creditors, constantly on the run. So David Peterson started drinking heavily, living like a drunk himself. Even when drunk, he would still come to my grave every few days to see me. But recently, his figure hasn't been seen. I heard from passers-by that he likely died on the street somewhere.